This edition of a deep dive documentary for CSEC novels and plays focuses on war, corruption, power hungry leaders, and a vulnerable, naive population. Animal Farm. In our deep dive, we will find out who the author is.
Shortly before it was published, he adopted the name George Orwell.
Place the novel in a historical context.
The answer can be found in the complex history of Russia and the events surrounding the Bolshevik Revolution.
Examine the major conflict.
The main conflict took an unexpected turn.
Analyze the setting and plot.
When it changed its name to the Union of Soviet Socialistic Republics, which is
Compare and contrast two major characters and explore the themes. What you're about to see will blow your mind. Deep Dive, Episode 1.
I'm Roshni Prasad and I will be doing an in-depth study of George Orwell. The most well-known novels of the 20th century are Animal Farm and 1984, both written by British journalist and author George Orwell. The son of a British colonial civil servant, Orwell was born on June 25, 1903 in eastern India. His initial name was Eric Arthur Blair. He received his education in England before leaving Eton and joining the Indian Imperial Police in Burma, a former British territory. He wanted to become a writer and left his position in 1927. He relocated to Paris in 1928, where his lack of literary success led him into a string of low-paying employment. He wrote about his experiences in his 1933 book, Down and Out in Paris and London. Shortly before it was published, he adopted the name George Orwell. In the late 1920s, he was identified as an anarchist, a person who advocates that no one should be forced into any kind of hierarchy. Until the 1930s, he was identified as a socialist. The truth is that George Orwell was an evident, ardent socialist who placed socialism above everything else. His profound mistrust of all dictators and narcissists was deeply rooted in his socialism. His involvement with socialism extended beyond only feelings. It was also a finely expressed intellectual interaction. Since 1936 was the year of the Spanish Civil War, which for many of its contemporaries was as pure and compelling a cause to fight for as few other things in history, you can find Orwell identifying that year as some sort of watershed in his career. He was hired in 1936 to compose a narrative on poverty experienced by jobless miners in northern England, and the outcome was, and I quote one of his book names, The Road to Wigan Pier, 1937. End of quote. Orwell traveled to Spain before the end of 1936 to support the Republicans in their battle with Franco's nationalists. He was compelled to leave because communists, with support from the Soviet Union, were putting down revolutionary socialist dissenters, and he feared for his life. He became a lifelong opponent of Stalin as a result of the encounter. Orwell worked on BBC propaganda between 1941 and 1943. He was appointed literary editor of the Tribune, a weekly publication in 1943. He had already published numerous books, reviews, and articles as a journalist. Orwell's Animal Farm was released in 1945. It made Orwell famous and assured that he was financially secure for the first time in his life. The political parable was set in a farmyard and was based on Stalin's betrayal of the Russian Revolution. 4 years later, the book 1984 was released. The book, which is set in a hypothetical totalitarian future, left a lasting influence, and several of its phrases, including, and I quote, "Big Brother is monitoring you," "Newspeak," and "Doublethink," end of quote, have since become commonplace. By this time, Orwell's health was failing, and on January 21, 1950, he passed away from tuberculosis.
My name is Crystal Johnson, and I'll be looking at the historical context of the text. The novella Animal Farm by George Orwell is an allegorical fable that is satirical in nature. But just what is the allegory itself based on? The answer can be found in the complex history of Russia and the events surrounding the Bolshevik Revolution, its consequences and impact on the wider world.
For centuries, Russia was an empire under imperial rule by the Tsar-headed nobility and was seen as one of the least developed countries in the entirety of Europe. Unlike other states, they practiced serfdom for an extended period of time past the Middle Ages. Serfdom was a system by which the peasantry had to work for the land-owning nobility. The poor masters suffered immensely under this system and lived in total squalor. In comparison to other European nations, Russia was extremely behind when it came to industrialization, and when serfdom was finally abolished in the 1860s, it would cause significant socio-political change. However, life did not become easier for the average Russian. In fact, they were faced with multiple hardships, such as population growth in major cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg due to the introduction of industrialization, which was accompanied by food supply shortages intensified by the harsh climate. Dissatisfaction among the people also grew as they faced even more losses through the Russo-Japanese War and the Bloody Sunday Massacre inflicted upon the people as a response to their protests to their quality of life and rampant economic crisis. Another key factor that led to the fall of the empire was the influence of Western ideals as well as socialism and communism. Intellectuals began to notice the difference in governance of the outside nations and Russia. They began to deeply resent the dictatorial reign of the Tsar. Things would peak when a civil war broke out in 1918 between the Reds, who were in favor of socialism and communism, and the Whites, who consisted of democratic socialists, monarchists, and capitalists. The Reds, or Bolsheviks, would arise victorious, and the Lenin-led Soviet Union, or USSR, would be formed, putting communism center stage globally. This would be the beginning of a very tumultuous time in world history and Russian society, as the globe witnessed the infamous power struggle between Leon Trotsky and Joseph Stalin after Lenin's death. It is these individuals who would function as the inspiration for Orwell's characters Napoleon and Snowball in his groundbreaking novel.
In George Orwell's novella Animal Farm, the main conflict took an unexpected turn. After the animals had already defeated their main foe, they encountered intense betrayal and treachery in the wake of pledging their alliance to the pigs, who in turn manipulated and exploited the animals both physically and mentally. The conflict of the animal versus the pig is just as equivalent to that of man versus society, since humans are substituted for the pigs and the society for the population of the Russian Revolution. The satirical novella successfully uses its main conflict to stimulate not only development of the plot, but also growth of its character. The plot conflict began with Old Major admonishing the rest of the farm to prepare for what he envisioned to be a revolution against the humans and a better life for the farm animals. Old Major's vision had come to pass after he passed away, just the same way Karl Marx had passed away before he wrote the Communist Manifesto, which was a guiding principle of the Russian Revolution. Subsequently, the animals had won the fight over the humans, whom they saw as their only enemies until the pigs became their rival. Napoleon became power-drunk and seized control over the entire farm. He manipulated the rules of the farm to suit that of the pigs, who automatically were in a higher class than the rest of the farm. His main excuse for such is that the farm needed to be maintained by those who have a long-standing memory and is capable of managing it. Squealer, the well-known pig, is an excellent speaker and is constantly able to convince the rest of the animals that what Napoleon is doing is all for the best of them. Napoleon used fear and propaganda to remain in control, just the same way he abuses his power to a point where he started killing the animals who had a different point of view from him or even seemed to be contrary to what he was doing.
Next, we're going to talk about the setting in Animal Farm. George Orwell's satirical book Animal Farm uses metaphor that illustrate the political changes that occurred during the years of the Russian Revolution. The plot does not, however, specifically take place in one time period, but rather parallel the years of the Russian Revolution. The book satirizes that revolution, and in doing so, imitates the happening that occurred between 1917 and 1947. The mere farm, later called Animal Farm, is a small, independent farm positioned in the English countryside. This book's setting helps to give a symbolic and satirical foundation for a delicate subject in Europe. The farm, which was once governed by humans, is redeemed in favor of animals as they rebel against the tyrannical farmers, establishing a new social and political dynamic, much like Russia did when it changed its name to the Union of Soviet Socialistic Republics, which is particularly intriguing. This piece of historical context is what formed the layers of hidden meaning in George Orwell's work and gave birth to the idea of Animal Farm. On Animal Farm, the working class is continually exploited by those on the top of the hierarchy, represented by Mr. Joe, the farmer, and the rewards of their labor are only enjoyed by those who take advantage of them. The author was able to take what is happening in Russia to build an allegory that mocks the political corruption he initially lost because the farmer-animal interaction in Animal Farm parallels the dynamic between those in power and the working class of society. The fact that it is called Manor Farm indicates that a local aristocracy, the lord of the manor, previously owned it. The animals have lofty goals. To prove their point, they painted the 7 commandments on the barn wall, which include statements like all animals are created equal and whatever travels upon 2 legs is an enemy.
No animal shall kill any other animal.
Fighting each other is the nature of man.
Ah, Pincher, sit down.
And most importantly, 7.
Amongst us animals, there must be unity and comradeship. All animals are equal.
They constructed a windmill, and this project was repeatedly rebuilt after being damaged by the storm and a group of farmers using dynamite. And to end, even though Animal Farm is physically located in a rural area of England, the metaphorical location might be an any oppressive reign anywhere on the globe. Furthermore, the setting of Animal Farm might be used whenever and everywhere where tyranny and propaganda is practiced. Therefore, Animal Farm somewhere in England can be Animal Farm everywhere, because Animal Farm describes the potential harm that can occur under any repressive government in any part of the world.
Snowball and Napoleon were depicted as two influential historical figures, both on the opposite side of leadership. Writing them both as pigs who were the most intelligent or literate at best on the farm is symbolic. It is symbolic to how Owens viewed leaders in the revolution, whether they had integrity or were merciless dictators. They still led wars which resulted in countless death and destruction. Owens posed an important question by starkly contrasting these two characters. Which pig do you prefer? Napoleon started out like everyone else who was a believer in old Major's philosophies. He upheld them until his malicious plans came to fruition. He manipulated his way through the hearts and minds of the unsuspecting animals by giving them empty promises and feeding them lies. He betrayed many comrades in his quest for triumph over all to live by his own selfish philosophies while he rubbed shoulders with the humans. The animals trusted him to help make their newly captured farm a fully functioning one. But he deceived them like the true pig he is. Napoleon is the representation of Joseph Stalin. Stalin, in true dictator form, forcibly collectivized the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics agriculture after he industrialized it. As dreadful as he was, he consolidated his position by intense police terror. Who also used terror to consolidate his position? Napoleon. He destroyed the option of individual freedom for the animals when he trained Jesse's dogs to be ruthless enforcers of power and greed. On the other hand, Snowball added a different dimension to a pig as a leader. He was honest, charismatic, and truly believed in Old Major's philosophy that all animals are equal. Snowball had big dreams that their seized farm would be successful and inspiring to many other animals who would be motivated to participate in the uprising. He fought alongside his fellow animals, showing true camaraderie and commitment to being of service. However, his coy nature resulted in him being exiled from the farm from the ravenous Napoleon. Snowball was the embodiment of the Marxist revolutionary Leon Trotsky. Trotsky led many revolutions that both failed and succeeded, but he was best known for his beliefs in Marxism, which was later coined Trotskyism, as he developed his ideologies. Trotsky, like Snowball, was a visionary before he was exiled by Stalin and later assassinated by a follower of the Soviets. Some themes found in Animal Farm are the corruption of leaders, the dangers of a naive working class, the abuse of power, the exploitation of the animals, and tyranny. Orwell satirizes the issues of tyrants by using the main character, Napoleon, who exhibited many characteristics of an autocrat and oppressor all at once. Orwell accomplishes this by incorporating events that reveal Napoleon's true side, and even more intriguing, by using Napoleon, a dictating pig, to intimidate the behaviors and characteristics of Joseph Stalin. The novel also heavily focuses on how exploitation occurs. We see how the other animals on the farm are slowly being manipulated and brainwashed into overworking themselves, while the pigs enjoyed the fruits of their labor. Boxer the horse was an excellent example of what happens when you have blind faith in leaders and do not question authority. It shows that a combination of naivety, loyalty, and being uneducated can be a very dangerous game.